Colleen Gibney. Colleen is from ITAC, the Industrial and Technology Assistance Corporation. It's a regional technology development center and part of the New York State Manufacturing Extension Partnership. As Technology Project Manager for ITAC, Colleen helps companies grow and retain jobs in New York State. She provides consulting services for small technology firms and advanced manufacturers seeking R&D funding, new product development processes, and university assistance to develop and commercialize innovative new intellectual property. Colleen currently serves as the state-sponsored SBIR specialist for New York City, Long Island, and the Hudson Valley, and has joined us today to give us an overview. I suggest you take notes. She's very knowledgeable.
I'm really happy to be here with you again. I love these events. I love getting people excited about SBIR, and I love that all of you are smart enough to work with an SBDC right now. And the reason is because, as you'll see, there are some changes in the program, changes that should drive you running to your counselor's office because they have to do with proving you're a business. And those are things that SBDCs can really help you get set up. So, can I ask, how many of you guys have applied for an SBIR or STTR in the past? Any applicants? Okay, so then you're pretty familiar. Good. Win it? No? It's okay. Most people don't win their first time. Most successful winners did not win their first time. So keep that in mind. Can you guys hear me okay? I hear the air conditioning behind me so much. Okay. I'm going to go a little bit quick on these slides because I do want to make sure we meet the timeline. If I start to go over time, someone wave at me. But these slides are available to you. I've also put them up on my LinkedIn page and SlideShare, this version. They are, and I'll tell you how we're funded and stuff like that again. For those of you who may have seen me do some of these slides before, there is some new information about the program in 2013. The reauthorization we have been waiting for is here. And some of the news is not good, but some of it's great. And the important thing is the program will continue another 6 years. So what is the mission of SBIR and STTR? Supporting scientific excellence and technological innovation through the investment of federal research funds in critical American priorities to build a strong national economy, one small business at a time. What is a small business in the SBA world? Does anybody know? Yes? 500 employees or fewer is correct, although, asterisk, when we get to the reauthorization, you'll see how they're trying to write around that for the reauthorization because there is a piece about venture capital-owned companies that we will come to, which obviously are larger than 500 folks. However, in general, that would make you qualified if you're under 500 people. The good news here is if you're one person or two people, you are qualified. Bad news is you're competing against people who are 499 employees. So you have to be highly competitive, but you can do this. This number is a little bit old. $2.4 billion was allocated in 2011. These are the set-aside numbers. The numbers you get for these two programs come from what's called extramural R&D, money that the agency is spending externally to them on R&D. These percentages will both go up incrementally starting in 2013. So that will show an increase that is good. Proportionally, a little bit more increase in STTR, but this will make more sense in a few slides. Who is this funding available for? If you're a US citizen who owns a company or startup and you're commercializing new intellectual property, it's for you. If you're a researcher, restrictions apply, with an applied technology but no funding to create a prototype, it may be for you, depending on your corporate structure and your status with a research institution as a full-time employee. And if you're an inventor with a concept funded out of your own pocket, you're totally qualified. However, I'm going to walk you over to Stony Brook and say you need to talk to a PhD to be more competitive, to partner with somebody. And you'll see that a theme throughout my presentation is about not going it alone. To be competitive under the new rules, you need to partner like crazy. I really believe this. You need to partner with your SBDC. You need to partner with a university or research institution, even if they're a subcontractor. And ideally, you need to partner with your supply chain of the future. The folks who you want to sell to as your first customer, maybe that's a prime contractor, this is the time for you to have relationships and to work with them, even early stage, to show the government that you know how this product is going to get into production. Okay. Some people blow off grants, especially 5 or 6 years ago when there's a little more angel money floating around. People would say to me, it's not enough money, why should I bother doing this? But I will tell you, don't overlook this form of grant. There are some state grants, some of them apply more than others. Here in NYSERDA, it's iffy in this part of this economic region because of some of their restrictions, but there can be other forms. But SBIR and STTR is totally available to you. Okay. How does the program work? Now, we're talking about a program with 11 federal agencies, so there are a lot of differences and nuances. Each agency has a slightly different way of doing things, which makes my life fascinating. However, in general, there is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is proof of concept. I think of it as lowering the technical risk of the invention or innovation. Phase 2 is R&D toward prototype. What does that mean? Well, if you're in software, it could be putting up a scale prototype. If you're in medical device, it probably doesn't mean that because it's not going to be enough money. Okay? So it really depends, and you have to stage your project to fit the money. Phase 3 traditionally has not come with money from the government. There are some specific phase 3 programs that agencies may choose to have, and we're going to watch that unfold. What happens in phase 3, though, is in some agencies, such as DoD, Department of Energy, and NASA, you can be put on a preferred contractor status. They are supposed to use you before they use non-SBIR companies when procuring a particular technology through their supply chain. Okay. Right now, SBIR, phase 1, is up to $150,000 for 6 months. STTR is up to $100,000 for 12 months. You will see after reauthorization, STTR will come up. These are guidelines, though, so the government can make changes. In particular, smaller agencies such as Homeland Security have sometimes chosen to allow smaller awards so that they can have more awards. So these are guidelines, but generally it's true. And phase 2, up to $1 million for 2 years. STTR up to $550,000, although it's going to go to $1 million also. There are, people ask me about jumbo awards. There is discretion with the agencies to award more than this. Typically, I've seen that happen at the National Institutes for Health in drug discovery and medical device platforms. I've seen a couple of $600,000 phase 1s, I mean, things like that. Okay. We're proposing innovative ideas to meet federal R&D needs. There's 2 types of federal R&D needs as far as these agencies are concerned. Stuff that the federal government might want to buy and use, and stuff that they think should happen for the good of their particular mission. You know, the mission of the National Institute of Health is to improve human health, right? And the mission of National Science Foundation is more around promoting science. So in an STTR, small business technology transfer, partnership is required with a research institution. Often that's a university, it could also be a nonprofit research hospital, and or folks like that. You are required to have a formal partnership under this form of grant. But why should you consider STTR? Because some of you may be in companies where you don't have a chief science officer. You may not have a chief technologist. Your CEO may be actually an MBA and not someone with a science background. In those cases, I think STTR can make a whole lot of sense because you bring that technical expertise and perhaps some new intellectual property from the university into your company, and you create value for all of you. So how the program is funded, we talked a little bit about extramural R&D. SBIR does permit research institution partners. You can do an SBIR, which is a bigger program and more opportunities, and you can still involve the university or research institution, but they'll be treated as a subcontractor, and it's got to be about 30% or lower of your work plan and your budget. STTR brings that back up to a bigger partnership. So some benefits, okay? SBIR is a first level of investment. That gives you some traction. If you're in a field where angel investment happens, or it can give you some technical validation to say you've successfully completed a phase 1. The government is taking that risk on you. You can verify your innovative technology just through the process of reducing your technical risk. It's peer reviewed, it reduces risk, but it has grown increasingly competitive, and with reauthorization that will continue to be true. But you're building value in your business because it's not dilutive. Can someone tell me what dilutive means? Dilutive means if you actually bring on an investor and they invest in your company, they're going to get a share of the profits, right? They're going to get a share of the ownership of your company. You're going to have to split up your company and the value that you as the founder of the company will receive in terms of wealth. In this case, the government puts in the money, but they do not expect money back. Okay, that's very valuable money. No future debt is accrued. Inventors retain 100% of intellectual property and commercialization rights. There is something called march-in rights, you'll see in the forums. So if you're creating something that's desperately needed in wartime, and then you decide not to produce it, and the government paid for it, they can pull it out and force you to produce it or force someone else to produce it. I don't think this has ever happened in all the years of this program, so it's not a big concern. They like to leave it in there for emergencies. And licensing and royalties can equal future revenue streams. Okay, so SBIR and STTR fund the exploitation of scientific breakthroughs. They fund emerging technologies, major improvements, not minor improvements to an existing technology. And the most important piece is if you have what they will consider a commoditized technology, it's out there somewhere, it won't be accepted. And it may not even have to be in the marketplace. If you get a reviewer who also works for Stony Brook or another school, and they happen to know that, well, we've known about this technology, it's been proven for a lot of years, it just isn't in the market, they will still mark that as commoditized technology, unless your use case is very new and different. What we call at ITAC needs to be meaningfully unique. Okay? So I mentioned there's 11 agencies, and I'm not going to read them because you'll have this, but not every agency has it. Some of the agencies you wish were bigger or smaller. Are any of you guys in transportation industry? Okay, sometimes they get some of those out here. It's a very small agency. The big dogs are Department of Defense. They have the largest external R&D budget. NIH, that's all your health and bioscience and medical device. NASA is fairly big. NSF is mid-size, big. And then some of the other ones are a bit smaller. Department of Energy has increased actually, and is now, it's good size, mid-size. Okay, are you eligible? Let's find out. We talked about 500 employees, we talked about US owned. You can't be dominant in the proposed field of operation. If you're not Google, don't worry about this right now, just keep moving. The principal investigator, again, the head of the science on this project, principal investigator, needs to be employed by the business over 50% of the time. No other organization can claim them as a full-time equivalent employee. So, if you've got a Stony Brook professor that you're working with, and they are full-time at Stony Brook, they probably can't be your principal investigator on a SBIR. On an STTR, sometimes they can. On an SBIR, there would have to be an arrangement with the university, or they would have to go part-time, or something else would have to happen. But don't just stop working on your process. Talk to me, or someone who knows SBIR, and see if there's a way that we can make it fit the rules. It may have to do, you may have grad students in the lab who are qualified. There may be ways to do it. Not always, but it's better to try. And you must control your research direction. If Grumman, who would be a great partner, if they came in and wanted to work with you, that's great. But they can't say, hey, little company, I want you to produce this product, and we're going to actually control it, but we're going to make it look like you guys are doing it. Not that they'd ever do that, but it would not be allowable. I'm just picking on Grumman. Okay. So how do you start looking for topics to see, this is 11 agencies. How do you even know which agency to look at? There are search portals, and they have actually gotten much better in the last year. Particularly SBIR.gov is so much better. It's going to get even better, but that's mixed news for you guys. It's going to get better because they're going to force you to give them a lot more data than they did before. That means there'll be a lot more data for you guys to look at in the future. So it depends how you look at it. Zid.com is also a great resource, and they have a lovely SBIR insider newsletter that Rick Schindel writes, and I recommend you sign up for that. Do your homework, review your solicitation information, look at announcements. There's going to be more emails, paperwork, administrivia to go through than you could imagine, and there's going to be more after the authorization. You have to stay on top of that. You have to be organized, okay? You have to know the guidelines. You have to know all these things. Read everything twice, make notes. Check what was funded in the past. And be careful about the sample, template, model proposals that float around the internet. They may have been awarded a few years ago, but the program changes constantly. Something that was awarded 3 years ago probably wouldn't make it today, and the programs evolve. So you want to do it based on your knowledge of your company and your ability to address the problem that the federal agency is proposing. I got to contact the agency. This is something I can help you with, or other folks can. I don't want you to just pick up the phone and randomly have a conversation. I want you to be very, very strategic about this. And some of them prefer email. But you want to learn why the agency is funding your topic. You want to hit them at a time when they're allowed to talk to you. Some agencies have blackout periods, and they cannot discuss it with you during that period. So know your agency. You got to know their mission and their culture. You got to make sure you're using the right words. Be sure you understand, again, blackouts. And again, go back and research previous awards, which now SBIR.gov makes much easier. It used to be you had to go to every single website of the agencies. Most of them are now compiled. Okay. All right, tactical tips. You gotta have a plan. How many of you guys have business plans? Okay, I wanna see every hand up next time, so I'm just gonna say again, go to your SBDC. Get a business plan. It doesn't have to be 50 pages long. Just get a business plan. Because that business plan is going to go back and forth and make your SBIR much faster to write. And I want you to really focus on customer development and read books by Steve Blank. That's just me. But leverage federal and state resources, leverage relationships with outside organizations, subject matter experts, particularly from universities. They like the PhDs. They like them. Use them. And engineers. Engineers are good too. Leverage your personal resources and ask for letters from potential customers. Notice I say customers. Notice I don't say the politician who lives next door to you, because they don't like being pressured by Congress. That is bad to them. They are actually a very, very clean program. They don't like to be politicized. The people who work in these SBIR agencies are very serious about helping companies. So the letters they really want to see are maybe a Stony Brook letter saying, you know, we work with these guys and we're going to continue providing resources. If you're affiliated with an incubator, that can be a good letter. But the real letter that they want to see, that's the hard one to get, I know, is the company that would be your first customer saying, gosh, I buy this thing from them, but it's just a little early stage right now and it has a lot of risk. But if you guys can help me de-risk this, we would order X units. That's the letter they want to see. That they don't know how else to prove commercialization. It's a really great way to establish that you have that type of relationship. So, technologists. Some of you are technologists. You don't like to sell stuff. Selling is what salespeople do. Unfortunately, an investor is an investor, and the government counts. So you still have to be able to sell. But what is selling in this instance? It's really understanding the problem and then describing how you're going to solve the problem, okay? Understand the funder's motives and values. Articulate how you are different from competing technologies. Often we do this in a grid with competing technologies, so it's a quick way for them to look at it. Show that you know your market. You have to have proposal quality. You need it to be engaging and easy to read without sounding like a white paper that you might put on your website that's very, you know, marketing and we're so awesome and this kind of thing. You got to remember, these guys who are on these research panels, and every agency does this differently, but several of the agencies have reviewer panels made up of volunteers who are former winners and some research faculty in a topic. You know, They're hopped up on Starbucks, eating pizza in a hotel in Seattle, okay? They went through a stack of 50 on the plane, and they put the ones on top that look like they could stand to read them, all right? Because you can imagine what they get. I mean, it's not, I know a lot of reviewers, and most proposals that they see are not written terribly well. And so you want to catch them really early in the first page, and you want to write it well. And, I think last time I was here, I talked about our rule of 5. You know, it needs to be something that a 5th grader can understand, or an adult on 5 drinks. So if you can do that and make it really, really crystal clear, you will be more successful. And the way to do that is, again, not to go it alone. Have people read your SBIR. They don't have to be as technical as you are. In fact, it's better if they're from another field. Have them help you understand if it's clear. I'll help you. I'll read it. I won't always read it an hour before it's due, so give me some time. But I will try. Deal breakers. Unclear writing. I totally understand and respect if you speak 4 languages and English was the 4th. That is fine. But it puts the burden on you to get a native English speaker, science English speaker, to make it beautifully written, okay? It's not on you, it's just you have to do this for the reader to, it's enough for them to have to translate the understanding of your technology English to English. You throw another language in there, it makes it hard for them to understand. Your principal investigator needs to be truly qualified. It is better if they have publications in their field. It is better if they have a good track record with the agencies. Now, not having that won't disqualify you, but this is a game now about winning and competition. Got to be different from the herd. There was a period where I had a lot of clients who were filing with medical informatics software. And for some reason, there was a reviewer at the agency, and these are all anonymous, but I kept getting them back saying, this is too much like a customer relationship management software. We've seen this before. And I kept scratching my head going, these are not CRM. I don't understand. But there was some reviewer who just feels like every type of software that is is commodity. So in some cases, these folks refiled, emphasized different things, and won later. So they didn't explain how they were different enough. For some agencies, particularly NIH, you need to have labs, you need to have a real business, you may need to be in an incubator, okay? You can't always work out of your home, and especially if there's a science and engineering piece to this. Software, there's a little more flex, but if you are doing lab science, you can't just use the university's facilities in most cases on an SBIR. You need to have space of your own. They want to see that you're a real company and not just a side project of a professor. You can be a real company spin out of a professor, but they don't want the money to just get sucked up into the lab of a university, because what is a university not? It's not a small business. That's why. And universities have other funding that they get from these agencies. Okay, now we're going to get into realization. Excuse my coffee. 6 more years. That's the good news for those of us who really struggled with whether it was going to go on. Yay. Miles of legislation, and if you see the original version of this thing, you'll see that you can click on the link there and see the actual thing, but it's ugly and long. You may not want to. Tough new guidelines are happening. I'm going to mention a couple, and you can't go alone. If you think you can go home, write this SBIR, follow all the rules, and just turn it in, you're not going to win unless you are a Nobel Prize winner. You need to have people around you. You need to think about this like a swarm. You need to have a mental board of directors if you don't have an actual board of advisors. And you know what? It's not a bad idea to have a board of advisors for your grant. At least 1 or 2 great advisors. You don't have to pay them, but if they're willing to be advisors to you, why not, right? Read everything twice, because the rules, they are changing. Let's talk about some of the changes. I'm going to hit these pretty fast. They won't make sense to you if you don't know the existing rules. But if you do, you'll see where the changes are. And again, I'm happy to go over these later in the question and answer session. Set aside percentages will increase gradually. The money set aside for these programs will have some increase. You will see some increase in the amounts awarded. There had been nothing happening for so many years before that this is a welcome change. The agencies have never gotten very much overhead out of this program, and that's made it very hard for them to staff it. And that's added to the frustration about how long it takes to find out if you win. You know, it takes about 6 months now in many agencies, 4 to 6 months, depending, to find out if you've won. And they're really working on funding that a little better and trying to close that gap so that it's faster for applicants. Sticky point, one of the things that kept advancing through Congress. Venture capital majority-owned companies will be able to participate, not wholesale, but in certain ways in the program. We will know more about this in early 2013. They are working out the details of how this works because what is a venture capital firm? Not a small business. So there are a lot of feelings about that on both sides. It's a battle that was really fought and won within the biotech world in some ways because a lot of tiny biotech companies are majority VC owned just to survive. So it's a tough problem for them. But a VC-backed company can put a full-time grant writer on them in this grant. You can't. So to you guys, I wouldn't say give up at all. I would say you have to up your game by that much. You have to outthink these guys. And small companies can do that, but you have to put the work in. You're going to be required to register with one more group, SBIR.gov. Again, they're going to collect more data. I've always felt this program needed better data, so it will be annoying in the upfront, but it will be better to be able to clearly see the benefit that this program has had to the U.S. innovation infrastructure. The SBIR program has been copied throughout the world. It is the U.S.'s innovation infrastructure for small companies. And most people don't even know about it because we don't have a Department of Innovation. But this is the closest thing we have, and it's fairly fair. And so there's going to be a little bit more administrative overhead to get to that point. There's going to be more cross-program and cross-agency awards. That's good because if you win a phase 1 at Department of Energy and they don't decide to make a phase 2 because they've changed their funding priorities, Department of Defense may want to pick up that award. There have been limited ways for that to happen in the past, but this is going to increase it. It's very good news, especially for those of you in the DoD, NASA, Department of Energy kind of areas. Okay. Key changes again. There will be a direct-to-phase 2 pilot available at some agencies. However, the agency folks I've talked to are not terribly excited about this. Can't say more than that because this is going on a webcast, but I will say that we will see what happens as they roll out. I would not want to go direct to phase 2. It seems tempting, but unless I had the perfect project for that. So this is a strategic piece for you to think about. Phase 1 awardees will be eligible for phase 2 in agencies that previously had to be invited to apply for phase 2. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it right now. But it is a change. There will be something new called the commercialization benchmark. And this is what I was starting to tell you about, is that there have been companies in the past that had multiple phase 1s, but then just kept generating more phase 1s and didn't, for whatever reason, get a phase 2. It may not be because of that. It may be because the agency didn't offer a phase 2. It may be because of, a change in your corporate structure, but that they're going to start assessing you and taking a look at what your habits have been, what your history is, because they don't want to encourage you just making revenue off the phase 1s. Speaking of things they don't want to encourage, waste, fraud, and abuse are huge. There will be earlier and more audits. You have to get your financials, government, accounting in order much earlier, make it clean, never forget a timesheet. Timesheets for your employees. And then this is the date of the changes. I got one more slide on reauthorization. This is a sticking point we were just talking about as well. Previously, startups could qualify as small businesses at the time of award. Now you will have to qualify at the time of submission. See your SBDC. You've got to be incorporated. Now, it may be that you need your principal investigator to be working for you at that point. I think those details are being worked out. We'll have to keep an eye on them. Agencies are trying to speed up the process, and I mentioned before that phase 3s will try to get into federal contracting more. Okay, here's some deadlines upcoming that you'll see in the slides. I won't go over them. In New York State Outreach, right now, this sort of explains my role. I'm here at ITAC, but ITAC mostly serves New York City. The center out here that I support for this purpose is Lyft. How many of you guys know Lyft? If you're in manufacturing, you should know Lyft. They do that stuff. So I'm here on Lyft's behest, and I can help you talk to them about anything you need as well. What can I do for you, as well as the other 2 folks in the state who do this upstate? I can help you find opportunities, lab partners, small businesses, proposal strategy. I can read your proposal with comments if you give me enough time. I can't write the proposal for you. And I don't think you want anyone writing your proposal for you. Like a business plan, I really believe it needs to be written by the founder or technologist. So this is me. I'm also available for anybody on Twitter. I tweet mostly SBIR stuff at @Gibney, C-O-L-G-I-B-N-E-Y. And if anyone wants to hit me on LinkedIn, that's fine. I put some of my presentations up there as well. So thank you, and I'll see you with the questions.
Our next speaker is Jeff Brogan. Dr. Jeff Brogan is the CEO of MesoScribe Technologies with 15 years of experience managing the growth, operations, and finances of a small business high technology company. MesoScribe manufactures high temperature sensors, antennas, and structurally integrated wiring for aerospace, energy, and military markets. Dr. Brogan has helped raise $20 million in funding through government programs such as the SBIR and STTR programs to develop and commercialize the company's direct write printing technology. Dr. Brogan has graciously agreed to be here today to tell us how these programs have helped his company.
Great, thank you. I think my hands are starting to defrost now. I don't know how you guys feel back there, but no one's going to be sleeping in this front row.
That's what we're doing.
So I was asked to participate today to discuss our experience with SBIRs. So again, my name is Jeff Brogan, and CEO of MesoScribe Technologies. I put a disclaimer on there because I'm going to tell you my experiences from a small business perspective. Not everything I say Colleen may agree with me, but may provide a useful or interesting discussion. Okay, I'm not here to talk about our company, but I thought just as a precursor, which would add a little bit to the discussion to understand where we came from, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about us. So our company was started in 2002. We're a spin-off company from Stony Brook University. There was a big program within the Department of Material Science in the late 90s, and technology was developed there. And so our company was formed to help commercialize that technology. That technology, which I'll talk about quickly, is called direct write. It's a printing technology. So there are 4 key patents that were filed at the university. MesoScribe was formed, and then we executed exclusive licensing agreements with the university. So we are the only company to exploit that technology, to either sub-license it, manufacture, sell, etc. So it gives us that competitive advantage. So we are a former tenant at the incubator, the Long Island High Technology Incubator, which Anil will talk to you further about. We were there for about 5 years. And now we're in Flowerfield facility. It's in St. James, and we also have a facility in Huntington Beach, California. This is actually one of our displays. So I just kind of put it together as a quick snapshot. So again, we're involved in sensors with our direct write process. It's a materials printing process. It allows us to print sensors, any kind of material, onto a part. So it's an additive manufacturing approach to integrate sensors or whatever electronics into components, whether it's for health monitoring of jet engines, monitoring damage within aircraft, or putting antennas onto UAVs for reconnaissance and surveillance missions. It's a very unique technology, it's a platform technology, and that's why we look towards SBIRs to help fund the development of products and our core technology, as opposed to reaching out for venture capital. And I can kind of talk about some of those differences as I proceed here. So just quickly, I didn't want to have a chronological overview, and my goal today is to really talk about maybe about 15 minutes, and then have more time for questions, because I think You may have more questions, maybe you would have more information to be gained from asking me as opposed to something that I'm telling you in a formal format. So anyway, as I said, the company was formed in 2002. At this time, you can submit a grant application, and the PI does not have to be full-time with the company. So if you're working at another job, or if you're working at the university, and you have a company formed, you can have it formed on paper, you can submit an application, an SBIR, STTR application. If it hits, now you've got money, and then you can make that leap and go full-time. Now that may change, but that was the case here. So again, we have SBIR phase 1. We leased 500 square feet at the incubator. We eventually expanded slowly to 2,000 square feet by 2008. So we hired our first full-time employee. At this point, we just had office space and we had a small laboratory area. Because this technology was developed at Stony Brook, it was critical for us to continue having access to the equipment and to the process at Stony Brook. It's an expensive process. If we were to set it up ourselves, we'd be putting out a lot of money, and that money could be best used elsewhere. So it made sense for us to use existing resources and try to preserve as much cash as possible. So you can execute agreements with Stony Brook University, and one type of an agreement is a facilities use agreement. So we did that, which allowed us access to facilities. We paid on some kind of a pro-rated basis, either hourly usage or these other mechanisms, and that was very helpful. So at this point, we pitched developing a printed sensor that could measure temperature, heat flux, etc., at high temperatures, which would be applicable for gas turbine engines. So this what kind of propelled our product development. So we have a few founders, which include professors, had a first employee, and we wrote more proposals. And at the same time, as Colleen mentioned also, it's very important to engage either a prime or an end user in the technology. We did that right up front in phase 1, and it's even more important now as part of the commercialization strategy to try to really think about how you're going to commercialize that technology, who's going to use it, and how you're going to get it to them. But this worked out for us well. We engaged them. We knew that they had an interest in monitoring their engines. That eventually led to a NIST ATP, which was a huge, it was like an adrenaline injection, whatever. It was a big, multi-million-dollar program where they had a vested interest in it, and it was kind of an interesting story about that. But basically, it's close to a $5 million program between the two, and it was a big plus for us. So anyway, that phase 1 became a phase 2. So we submitted a phase 2 application. We successfully were awarded that, $600,000 at the time. So phase 2, Department of Energy was 24 months. We hired more employees, 2 more, and then we started leveraging SBIR funding. SBIR, I think it still exists on campus. It was tremendous for us because we had a close association with Stony Brook already. If you don't know what SBIR is, it's called Strategic Partnership for Industrial Resurgence. If you were to put in, say, $10,000 or $15,000 for that SBIR grant or for some other source of income into Stony Brook University towards a project goal, New York State would cost match that. So we were getting a lot of bang for our buck, and that would be used to fund a graduate student, a professional employee, a postdoc who would work on our project. And many times, those employees or personnel would then, they were actually providing a pipeline for future full-time employees for us. So it allowed us to get a lot more done without putting out a lot of cash. So SBIR was very critical for us early on. 2003, we got 3 more phase 1s. So now we got a little critical mass. We have some personnel, started writing proposals, and started writing more proposals because it was important for us. We needed time to develop this technology. When we licensed it, it wasn't ready to go. We couldn't commercialize it at the time when we licensed it. We have huge technical challenges We had to meet specifications for our sensors, for the technology. It had a long way to go. In fact, we still have some work to do, even though we've commercialized products. But it's a new disruptive technology and it needed time. So SBIRs allowed us to bring in funding as opposed to VCs, which would have been too time crunched for us to meet their expectations. Now I'm going to fast forward because I didn't want to make this a really long story, but now 10 years later, we've had 56 grants and contracts, 44 SBIR awards. That includes both phase 1s and phase 2s, so 27 phase 1s, 17 phase 2s. Our general acceptance is probably about, it's like, I think we have about 40% hit rate, so 4 out of 10 proposals get accepted, which is well above average. About 70, I think 75% of our phase 1s go to phase 2s. And we've had funding from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, DARPA, Missile Defense Agency, NASA, NIST, and DOE. As Colleen mentioned, proposals, they all kind of vary a little bit, the requirements. Each agency is a little bit different, but there's also a lot of similarities as well in terms of what you need to pitch to try to get that funded. Because again, it's a great way to launch a business, bring in funding, hire personnel, bring in instrumentation, etc. So talk about that shortly. So our funding, so what did it do for us? So again, we wanted to have gradual expansion, and that's what it did. We had small increases in real estate, just 500 per year at the incubator. We hired 1 to 2 employees per year, as opposed to bringing in $5 million in venture capital, hiring 30 employees. That wasn't going to work for us. Our funding, it enabled really the purchase of our facilities, the laboratory facilities, all our test equipment, instrumentation, robotics, either as a direct cost or on overhead. At this point, most of our income during the early stages is all government funding. So whether the government is funding the purchase of a microscope or whatever as a direct cost, or went on overhead, it didn't matter because our income was pretty much all from the government, so they paid for it one way or another. But we were very fortunate to receive this funding in order to create a business and give the instrument. Basically, now we have 14,000 square feet, but a lot of that is because of the SBIR and STTR program. We've heard a little bit already from Colleen about this, that the SBIR funding gives you retention of patent rights, which is great. So even if you are a subcontractor and you want to work for another SBIR company, so you're subcontracting to company XYZ, and you're working together, you develop something, you get to retain the rights. It's not like they give you a purchase order and they own everything. It's very important. So all those flow-down clauses from the FAR concerning intellectual property rights and retaining the patent rights flow down from you, from the prime to the sub. So it's important. And also data rights. SBIRs gives you data rights. The government isn't allowed to divulge to anyone how you did something or the details of your invention, how you make it, etc., because you own the data rights. And every time you get a new contract from phase 1 to phase 2, you increase the length, the term of those data rights. You get 4 years per contract. And now with phase 3s, it's the same thing. So a phase 3 can be a purchase order from a company, it can be another government contract or grant, as long as it logically extends or derives from your SBIR activity, and you get that stamped as a phase 3, because it's from that SBIR project, you get another 4 years of data rights. So as you extend this can become more important than having a patent, because a patent is going to expire. These data rights are very important and can create actually a lot of value for your technology and company. The other thing about SBIRs is no loss of equity, which you heard from Colleen. It's not a loan. You don't have to pay anything back. And I don't think the rules have changed here, but there's no cost share. So there's a lot of government programs you hear about from EAAs. There's a lot of solicitations out there, requesting proposals, where you can put up 20% cost share or more. There's nothing. You don't have to put any cash into it. So basically, it's either a grant or it's a cost-based contract where you get paid based upon your incurred costs. So that's also big. Our funding also enabled us to transition technology to other markets. So sometimes you may have a phase 1, and you want to go to a phase 2. Well, because we do mostly military contracts, grants, sometimes that phase 2 potential or possibility disappears. They decided that's no longer of interest to us. So nobody's getting a phase 2. So that happens. So you have to think about, well, where else can I take this technology and apply it for other areas in order to exploit it and make money? And this is one example where we have been successful. We need to do a lot more of this, honestly, but luckily we have a couple things that we have done well. So we've developed this capability of making flexible antennas, very large antennas for NASA. And we took that capability and transitioned that into an aerospace product, which we now set up in production, and it's being used in commercial aircraft now as we speak. But the only reason why we're able to do that is because of the capability provided to us or developed by that SBIR. So this is where I can get into a little bit of trouble, because I want to talk about some lessons learned, but I'll try to gotta minimize that. Now, I wanted to come up with a few statements that just didn't sound like generic blanket statements, motherhood statements that you've heard 1,000 times. And maybe it's also slightly biased, because when I wrote this, it probably was influenced how I was feeling about that moment. But anyway, just a couple things to keep in mind is some of you guys are now starting your own company or have your own company. This is not anything new, but keep your overhead low. Minimize your expenses and stretch your cash. The point here is really to take advantage and leverage resources that are free to you. Sometimes there's free patent counseling. The incubator has a lot of facilities, a lot of resources that we took advantage of at that time to provide advice to us. Talk to other company CEOs. Talk to other people who have gone through that process, and whether or not you need a quality assurance plan, or whether you're trying to figure out benefits for your employees, or what kind of incentive plan you need for employees. Rather than paying for that, try to take advantage of resources, whether it's SBTC, et cetera, so that they can give you the advice. You want to save as much cash as possible, because what you're trying to do, the whole goal of getting a phase 1, the whole goal of a phase 1 is to get a phase 2. So once you're in phase 2, then you have some real money to try to develop something. Phase 1 just shows the potential that you can get a prototype done. So the whole idea is really to get to a phase 2. And it doesn't end there. I know that all too well. You really want to commercialize what you have in the phase 2, and it's very easy for stuff just to die on the vine and not go anywhere after that. Sometimes it's in your control, sometimes it's not. This next bullet, you want to carefully manage expectations and adoption of required procedures as a government contractor. Now, I know Colleen's probably cringing, but yes, there's things you need to do, and there's things you need to do today. Maybe there's some things you can wait on. And you're not going to hear about the things you can wait on, because what you'll hear about is what you need to do today, because they'll give you the FAR, they'll give you a set of regulations, and they'll say, this is what you need to be compliant with in order to do business with the government. And if you were to take a look at that, it's daunting. So one advice I have is to make sure you set up your accounting system right from the start. You've heard about timesheets. That's important. You need to do that. Set up your accounting system, whether it's QuickBooks or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be an elaborate system, but make sure that you can identify your costs, whether it's a direct cost, an indirect cost, and then there's different ways to categorize those further. But you should be able to have that well set up so that if you get a phase 1 and then you get to a phase 2, you don't want to completely be in a situation where you have to redo your books, redo everything, because you want to start off with a good foundation to move forward. So that's one area that makes sense to get some help to make sure your accounting system is up to speed, because if it's not, you won't be given a phase 2. DCAA or another cognizant auditing agency will inspect your books, and they won't give you a dime until they think that you're ready. There's other things you can wait on. I'm not going to get into that because I'm being videotaped now. But I just know that there's a lot of requirements. We've had to deal with property control, quality assurance plans, quality control. All of those things are also important. You need to be compliant, but you can't take a cookie cutter plan that's meant for a large government contractor and say, okay, I'm going to follow this set of procedures, because you'll be spending your entire day trying to develop the administrative infrastructure to follow that procedures, and you're not going to get any work done, and it's going to take away from your goal of developing the technology. So you need to extract what you need. And it's hard to communicate that now, me standing in front of you, but there's ways to minimize that in order to serve certain purposes to be compliant. So I'll kind of leave it at that. And again, commercialization strategy is critical. You may have the best invention. You may have something that was developed at the university that you think should be the invention of the year. But if you don't understand how it's going to be sold and who's going to buy it and how you're going to get it there, whether you're going to manufacture it, license it, if that's not clear in your mind, and if it's not written down on paper, that's going to significantly hurt your chances of getting it funded. And you really want to be able to understand that yourself, because if you're serious about having a business, you need to know, well, how am I going to generate revenue? Because this is my last bullet. SBIR funding is not sustainable. And we're going through a lot of growing pains now, because you can build up a company and you can be successful bringing in phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3s, but that money is short term. And so you can build up your company, and then spigots can be turned off, and then what are you going to do to replace that money with? You need to be in a position to have some kind of sustainable revenue through product sales, licensing, etc. So the sooner you can understand how you think you can make money from your product or service, the better. So that's pretty much what I wanted to state. I think you got a little bit of a feel from I guess, our experience in SBIRs. I'm a huge supporter. I think it's a great way to launch a company. It's not easy to get an SBIR, but it's even more difficult actually to try to commercialize it from there. So there's a lot of new resources. SBDC, there's quite a few companies who are set up to assist you in commercialization efforts as well. So take advantage of those. And I wish you all success. And feel free to contact me if you need any assistance or have some questions you want to bounce off me. This is my contact information. I'd be happy to help you. Thank you.